Hello guys, welcome to Marcel Simon Show. It's another episode. Today I'm very honored to be joined by two gentlemen that I love so much. They're doing exceptionally well. They've been around for quite some time. They have been in student leadership and they've been doing great things, and now they're leading one of the best organizations in the country. So without any waste of time, I'm joined today by Kanakana and Bonga. Guys, I'm really, really thankful for making this time to talk to me. I don't take it lightly. Bonga, we come a long way. No, not to discredit you, my man, Kanakana. Respect you so much. But this guy is a friend of the show, is a friend of the show. So I will give you time, guys, to tell us more about yourselves.
Okay, I'll go first. Firstly, thank you so much for extending this invitation to us. We are very honored to be here. When a show that has hosted key figures extends an invitation to you, it's always a good thing, and we must always commend the fact that you are a young person pioneering something that a lot of people may want to label as not deemed to be of success. So we appreciate you taking this initiative. And also I must greet your viewers. My name is Kanakana Mudzanani. I have the privilege of being a graduate or an alumni of the University of the Witwatersrand. I'm a law graduate, and currently I serve as the president of the South African Youth Economic Council. When I was in university, I had the privilege of also serving as the Treasurer General of the Wits SCR, amongst many, many other positions I've held in student governance.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Marcel, and greetings to all your viewers. Again, I think it's a great honor and privilege to be on this platform. I think there's not much to say about me. My name is Bonga Makhayana. I come from the dusty streets of Lamontville in Durban, KZN. It's one of the very small township in KZN, as well as a very remote rural area called Zwelbomv, which is where we currently reside. But I live here in Johannesburg, and I too am a alumni or graduate from Wits University in the field of economic sciences. So I have a background in economics, and still studying, because some of us believe that post qualification education is very key in terms of personal development, and also just contributing. So I'm a honor student at Wits in economics, and I also serve on the South African Youth Economic Council as the executive chairman.
I can see with the jacket. Thank you so much. I'm the one here who's honored having you guys here. I know you guys have a busy schedule, but you decided to squeeze and slot me in. With that being said, I'm really appreciative. Today I just want to focus more on the role that you guys are playing. You guys have decided to form an organization called South African Youth Economic Council. So I just want to know more about what led into the formation of the organization and the role that the organization is playing currently in terms of addressing the factors of electricity and youth unemployment. Bonga, you can go first.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. So I think we recognize that there's a gap, or there's a void in terms of youth voice in South Africa, in terms of that speaks directly to the issues that young people are facing. So currently, right now in youth activism, there's no one who's speaking on behalf of young people, particularly on the economic question, in terms of their opportunities and all those things. So I guess when KK and I formed this organization, it was more to come and become that, to fill that void of saying, here are young people who are graduates, who themselves are unemployed graduates, and there's a burning crisis of youth unemployment, and we kind of want to form an organization that is going to actively fight towards ensuring that young people enter the strategic sectors of the economy, and deal with some of the fundamental challenges that are facing young people, and for people to start to see young people seriously and take them seriously. We ought to present ourselves as serious people as well, and also So I guess it was just to fill that void and kind of become that youth voice in that space, because we felt as though there was no one speaking on behalf of young people, or there was a lack of ideas when it came to young people participating in the economy.
You know, Simon, I am a huge fan of a man called Frantz Fanon. He was an author, very, very remarkable author and an activist in his own right. He coined a phrase which says that every generation must identify its mission and it must fulfill it or betray it in relative opacity. And I think Makhayana has summarized it quite well, that we acknowledged the fact that as a generation that was born in an era where political freedom was realized, we took note that political freedom alone is not enough and it needs to be followed by economic freedom. So after identifying that as a generational mission, we then said we have to take up arms even in the boardrooms and continue that mission which was left by O.R. Tambo unto the generation that was supposed to follow him. So we then decided that we need to form an organization that is going to ensure that young people are represented in commanding heights of the economy, be it mining, be it construction, be it property, because for a very long time, not only young people, by the way, but black people are participating in these sectors, not as owners of the means of production, but as suppliers of cheap and easily disposable labor. So the South African Youth Economic Council is that vehicle that says to a young person in Lusikisiki or in Hamuraga that yes, you must go to school, but you must begin to understand that life in the economy is multifaceted. You must not only go to school on the grounds that you want to become an employee, but we are also wanting to encourage you to believe that in one of the good days you can become the owner of the means of production. And I'm proud to say that since, in fact, our very first event that we hosted at the capital, a young lady who was there was identified by a company called Kenyon Coal, and today she holds a petroleum license and she's supplying diesel in their mines. And those are the kind of initiatives that we want to achieve and realize as a South African Youth Economic Council. So we are saying, yes, we are very much of a protest movement, but ours is to make sure that there is action behind the protest, there are objectives and there are goals. But more than anything, we also want to agitate and take these conversations to the boardrooms with captains of industries, because we believe that change politically alone is not sufficient if we are still not participating in the economy as young black people.
Yeah. You're saying that there's a young lady right now who has license in petroleum. The South African Youth Economic Council, does it give an opportunity for young people to present their ideas and help them to get licensing or get I don't want to say deals, but opportunities?
Well, our vice president is actually spearheading a desk. We call it the SMME desk, where basically every young person is encouraged to bring forth their idea. We've got a group of chartered accountants, financial experts, lawyers who are readily waiting to develop your business proposal, take your business idea to the next level. And the good thing about our desk is that it has a good access to what I would characterize as financial institutions. So I know funding is a very critical thing in every business. So once we've developed and polished your business idea, we are then able to go to financing institutions such as your CIFA, your IDC, and say, here is a young person, we've assisted them to comply, we've developed their business plan and a financial model for their business. Can you guys invest in this business? Because we think that as much as, yes, there is risk, however, there is appetite for the idea that is being presented by this person, and we think it would be feasible for you guys to invest. So we do have those kind of initiatives, and we encourage as many young people as possible to reach out to us through our social media and internet, so that we can be able to assist them through such platforms.
Yeah. Bonga, there's job opportunities, which you guys call it Imbizo, and there is mining in Indaba. What is the difference between these two events that you guys host?
So our events and programs that we host obviously are tailored to the needs at the time. So we, for example, in Feb, we understood that there's an event called the Mining Indaba that takes place in Cape Town, and this is an event attended by international dignitaries, presidents from all over the world, even the sitting presidents of South Africa and the minister. They go and they address the Mining Indaba together with CEOs of all major companies in the world in terms of mining, even financial service, all supporting services in the mining industry, including your banks, insurance companies, and so forth. So we then saw that and I think this was after we went to the mining Indaba, where we're privileged to be one of the minister's guests last year, and we attended the mining Indaba, and we saw that there's no one there speaking about young people. There are no platforms that speak to how young people can benefit from the mining industry, both in South Africa but also in the continent. So the Mining Indaba Business Dialogue then became a platform that we created to say, during the Mining Indaba, at the heights when there's all these dignitaries from across the world, from all these CEOs, the sitting president, we want to come and discuss how young people can play a role in the mining industry. And then we invite everyone that is there in the mining Indaba to come and participate and tell us their plans as to how they're going to include young people in the mining industry in terms of supply of critical services. Like you mentioned, the supply of petrol products, diesel products to mines. Those things are not being discussed at a real level. So that platform then kind of was the first of its kind to say, and we were lucky enough to have the Minister of DMRE, which is kind of like the whole main figure of the mining Indaba, as well as CEOs of Transnet, CEO of big mining companies, your Mike Deckers, to come and tell us what their plans are for young people in the mining industry. So it was an opportunity for young people to network amongst each other, small business owners, young professionals, engineers, mining engineers, unemployed graduates who are looking for jobs in the mining industry were able to come there and network with, C-suite executives and government dignitaries. So for us, that's a brilliant platform because it really bridges that gap between young people and the industry. And then with the jobs in Imbizo and even our other programs, it depends on what it speaks to. So for that, it's specifically looking at job opportunities for young people in critical areas of the economy, specifically jobs. So like now at the capital, we had the Minister of Digital Technologies and Communication, where we're looking at how can young people, where are the jobs in terms of the ICT and technology space. And we invited CETAs and other private companies, NASPAs, to come and see which area of the industry can unlock mass job opportunities for young people. So each of these programs are a platform to engage, or a platform for accountability. They're also a platform to kind of network with these key decision makers, because I think that's also quite key for us, making sure that there's people who actually take decisions in the room and are able to kind of drive the policies and the programs you want for them to benefit young people and empower young people at a real level.
I think also one victory to note that emanated from the Mining Indaba Business Dialogue is that the Council for Geosciences announced its initiative with the IDC to create a 500 million rand fund for emerging miners in the industry. So for us, it's platforms like the Mining Indaba that we must take advantage of, and we must consistently remind government that if you want to develop South Africa, you cannot do it at the exclusion of young people. So I just had to state that because I think that's one of the greatest victories that we should consistently celebrate.
Do young people know that there's so much money that is there on the table for upcoming miners?
We always say it, so it depends on young people. What are they using their access to internet for, But I do think that if you have a deep interest in the mining space and you know what the Council of Geosciences is, then you definitely should know about the fund. I think what we need to do with the chairman is we consistently need to take charge of this victory and announce it as much as we can, so that young people even know that there is a special fund that is waiting for them in the event that they want to become mine owners and they don't have access to capital. That fund is readily waiting for them.
You know why I'm smiling? It's because not a few years ago in 2021, when I was doing my first year, you guys were here together, and now you guys have tackled chairperson, chairman. It's such a small world. Now you guys are big names today. You are playing.
Are we big names though?
Nah, man, it is the fact that you guys have, no, man. You need to take credibility for this. The fact that you guys are having ministers like to schedule the whole day to come to the events that you guys are hosting and address young people. That's a big thing. You need to ask yourself how many young people at your age coming from the same struggles that you guys are coming from, who are having this huge platform, who are trying to address the issue of unemployment, who are trying to create not only job opportunities but giving young people to have businesses. So it's a great thing. You guys are big name today. So in saying that, are there young people today who are in mining because they attended one of these events?
There's quite a lot. I know 2 mining engineering students from Wits University. What we managed to do as a council was to introduce them to a company called African Exploration. It's a state-owned mine, right? And we said, these guys are brilliant, they're talented, and they do not have access to you guys in terms of when they're done with their studies. Obviously they would need to do vacation work and all of that, and they also need to get a sense of exposure in the industry. Can we assist you guys? And the fortunate thing was that AE was willing to listen to us, and they said, for some time we've been grappling with meeting our youth targets, so it would always be strategic or good to obviously use your platform to fish this talent. And those guys today are assigned to them. They've got a bursary from African Exploration, and I was with them actually at the capital, and they were alerting me to the fact that they are supposed to go for vacation work now in June. So we managed to do those little victories, which we appreciate. And also we must note the young lady I told you about, yes, who at our first event, because of networking purposes, was privileged enough to have access to a petroleum license that ultimately turned into a business that today employs over 30 people. So it's initiatives like that we've been able to create and achieve and see them through. But we must also mention it to your viewers that we're a council of about a year and a half years old now. So we should, at least in the next 5 years, be able to look back and say we've assisted this amount of people, and it looks like this is something that is feasible and working out.
Yeah, and I think also on top of that, there's many other smaller victories. I think we hosted an energy summit with the Presidential Climate Commission at the ICC in Sandton, I think in March. And now when we're having our events at the capital, there were 2 young guys who are owning a construction company who were saying, because one of the things we were saying at that energy summit was that youth-owned construction companies must be given a chance to play a role in the construction phase of these renewable energy plants. And with this guy came up to me and said, look, after that energy summit, we actually met with some of the executives that were there, and we managed to land a contract which we've been trying to get for a long time. Young guys in construction, and I didn't know about that until I saw him at the capital. So he said he's coming here to support, because the last time he came to one of our events, it led to a really big breakthrough for him in terms of a business deal, which we had no knowledge of up until like right now. So I think there's, and I mean, even those MCs who hosted our events, media students. I know there's a lady who hosted our event in Cape Town last year for the first jobs in Imbizo. Subsequent to that, ENCA was there covering the event, and a few other media practitioners, and she landed a job at Cape Talk, which is like under Radio 702, which was a pretty big deal for her. So there are a lot of micro examples of young people who benefit from some of the programs, but I don't think those are the main victories that we want to see. Of course, it's great that you might benefit from coming, but not all young people can come to Sandton or come to our program in Guamashu and be able to access that networking opportunity. So we want to see government roll out the policies that we actually propose, because then we think that will actually unlock mass opportunities. I think something also that we don't speak about, we said last year in June that Andre Derrida is bad for South Africa in terms of energy security and meeting our energy targets, and we think he should resign. We're one of the first people to come out openly about that, and we went across all media stations to lobby for that view, and also said Eskom must move to DMRE, for example. Through that lobbying and advocacy, all major parties in South Africa except for the Democratic Alliance have finally agreed that Eskom must move to DMRE in terms of streamlining government and making sure that we deal with load shedding more effectively when there's one center of command. So those type of policy victories, I think for us, is something that we can look back and say we actually did something. Because I think assisting a few people who come to our events is great, because but the impact is not at that level that we want to see. But seeing that there's huge policy shifts, budgets being repurposed, unlocking 500 million rand for emerging miners, that for us are the big victories that we're targeting in terms of implementing or rather influencing a huge policy and fundamental or radical policy shift, which is some of the victories that we've gotten as well, on top of these smolanyana, people getting jobs and people getting business contracts, which is very good, but not the strategic. Okay, it is part of the strategic objectives, but I think more broadly that policy wins are quite key as well.
How do you feel when you see young people like coming, hey guys, I just got a deal because I attended one of your events, my construction company now is doing well?
Well, I mean, it's great. I think it really is great. I was really proud of a young man, and I think that's what we want to see. That's why we formed this organization, to see young people playing a firm role in the strategic and commanding heights of the economy. So I guess it is quite fulfilling, and it makes us kind of see that we are doing something at the very least.
Yeah. And I think also activism is very tiring, so it's that sense of motivation that you always need to forge ahead or to move forward. Because Marcel, I think Bonga did mention that we were criticizing under the rate at some point, and we were actually calling for his retirement from ESCOM. And the truth of the matter is that there was a lot of backlash in the initial stages, and it's always affirming and motivating to see a young person who comes up to you and says, because of the work that you guys are doing, I've been able to achieve this and this and this. And it's that kind of motivation that then reignites the spirit to move forward. But I think more than anything, it's also quite critical to state that as a council, we are trying by all means to make sure that we represent all facets of spaces where young people may be belonging. For instance, the university sector is one of the sectors that we were introduced to activism through it. So even today, we still speak largely about it. We still speak largely about access to higher education and the fact that we need a government that starts seeing higher education not as a cost but as a social investment, particularly because if you invest in higher education, you skill a lot of young people, you are guaranteed that a lot of them are going to be active participants in the economy. So, it's those kind of areas that we also want to broadly push hard and make sure that we are aggressive on. And policy is very, very critical. There is, I think it should be well known to your audiences or members who are of the vets community. There are large discoveries that have been made in the country in the spaces of oil and gas. If you speak about the Karoo, if you also speak about your Mossel Base, that is where the future is. And we want every young person to have a deep interest in those spaces, because I can tell you now, Saudi Arabia, essentially the Middle East, is developing because of its oil reserves. And the reserves that we have in South Africa are just sufficient enough to even outdo the gold rush that we experienced when we developed the city of Johannesburg. So we want as many young people as possible to position themselves for another gold rush in the oil and gas sector. So there's something called the UPRDA, which is now out for comment. It's basically speaking about the development of petroleum, oil and gas resources in the country. So what we are consistently doing currently is engaging with a regulatory body called the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, and we are saying, in every project that you are going to develop, we want you to acknowledge the fact that at least 30% of your projects must be aligned to young people, because you cannot develop outside of young people. We know 30% is not a lot, but it's a good start. And one of the things that the chairman always speaks about is that we are tired of this 30%. We want young people to become ultimate owners. But when it comes to oil and gas, they're capital intensive, and we just don't want to throw young people in the deep end. But we are saying every foreign company that comes to invest here, at least they must take into account that they've got a social responsibility to redirect 30% of every project they want to develop to a young person or a youth-owned SMME.
Yeah. Bonga, Kanakana spoke about SAYEC being a representative of young people in all facets of economy. So what is your view, or maybe things that you would like to see happening next year at Wits University when it comes to the issue of fees and accommodation?
Well, I think we've always been clear, Yoguti, when it comes to higher education, we believe that there should be free quality education across the board. So we're still pushing hard for that view. Of course, that's not a Wits University issue. It's more of a systemic and broad national question, which I think we should be agitating for every single day, because it can't be right that there are still children of the working class who can't access the doors of learning simply because it's too expensive. And as much as we can agree that there might be NSFAS, which has assisted people who are below a certain threshold, we firmly believe that there should be some sort of policy intervention to deal with the missing middle. For example, if your mother or your father is a teacher or a nurse or a policeman and woman, they don't necessarily qualify for NSFAS because they're deemed too rich. But of course, to Wits University, you're still incredibly too poor to afford. A medical degree costs about 200,000 rand at Wits every year. And if you look at the average salary of the public service, that is around about the same amount of money. So even if you were to spend every single cent of your salary per annum to your child to go to Wits University, they still can't afford it. But they can't be assisted by NSFAS because they don't qualify in terms of the threshold. So as a council, I think we've been consistent and been clear that there should be free quality education, and we should start to look at as well at the missing middle, because that's what then leads to the problem that you're referring to every year, where young people across the country take to the streets to go and protest for access to higher education through the lifting of the fee block, or lifting of it's called the fee block across universities, where now you're sitting with debt and you can't afford to pay it, and you're not allowed to start studying. So things like that, I think also universities ought to make concessions. They should be sensitive to the plight of the poor and the middle class in South Africa. Understand that not everyone can afford these degrees, and when they come back in Jan with the debts of 400,000 rand or 200,000 rand, it's not of their own making, but it's more of a systemic kind of challenge that is facing people. And most people in South Africa are not working, so that's also another huge challenge around the debt. So you can't really expect people who are not working to pay back debt because they don't have a consistent income. So I think as a council, we're very consistent on that. And I think Wits is not necessarily an island, or it's not necessarily its own bubble. It exists in a community of universities which face the same problems, and all of them should be very, very sensitive to allowing young people across the country who qualify academically, and even those who don't qualify academically, as long as they've made it to Wits, they ought to access the doors of learning.
Yeah.
I think one controversial thing which must also be said, I think universities have this thing called institutional autonomy. I think it has allowed them to play around with numbers in a manner that I think, in my perspective, needs to start being regulated. I mean, if you do a proper analysis, the cheapest degree to attain at Wits University is around 62,000 rand. That's a lot of money. That's just a degree alone, and not even accounting for accommodation. The cheapest dress, I think, right now should be ranging about 66,000 rand. And I can assure you, come September, the financial committee of the university is going to hike both those fees with about 10%. And I know for a fact that to study medicine, just a single year is going to cost you around 94,000 rand. It's those kind of things that we need to start having conversations with institutions of higher learning to say, but guys, are you guys ivory towers that want to become a preserve of the few, or do you actually have a social role to play in the South African society, which is educating and skilling the nation? Because it cannot be that you expect someone who is a descendant of a teacher to come to Wits University and be able to pay 82,000 rand just to study mechanical engineering. So it's those modalities that we need to start speaking about and bringing universities to the table, because institutions of higher learning need to actually constantly be engaged. If we don't do that and we leave it to government, we are going to have a vicious cycle. Every year students will be protesting, and then they will be classified or associated or deemed to be hooligans. So we need to engage these institutions of higher learning.
And just tomorrow I'll be taking to Mr. Jerome, September. We'll be taking one of the issues. I just want to talk to him about these protests and all the stuff, because I don't like what happened to Mcebo Dlamini, during the protest. At the end of the day, he's being charged, and now his career the university working with the law, is making sure that he doesn't practice what he studied for. Right now, up here where he's attending cases and all the stuff. So it's not like we want to go in the streets, but we have some key solid reasons why we are going there, and these things have been there for years. So I just pray and hope that at the end of the day, one day there will be a very solid way to solve this thing without having students to go to the streets. At the end of the day, there are about 3 or 5 students who suffer, so we end up having criminal records just because they are fighting for other students, you see. So,
but you must actually ask Mr. September tomorrow what is the university's plan in dealing with the crisis that will emerge next year. Because, again, we need to engage universities, and we must make sure that at the very least they have a plan prior to the crisis arising. Because now there is a cap that has been introduced by NSFAS of 44,000 rand on student accommodation. You are guaranteed that a lot of Wits students are going to owe. Yes, it's not the university's responsibility to look out for those students, but the university can engage with the government and say, but guys, look, this cap that you are applying cannot apply to us because our cheapest accommodation is 66,000 rand. So what are the measures that we are going to put in place in order to make sure that our students are at the very least, are protected or exempted from this cap? So it's those kind of initiatives we want to see from the university. I think I've had interactions with the Vice Chancellor, and it's always a constant engagement to say to him, we're not necessarily fighting you guys, but we are saying to you guys, you could have possibly stood with us in our fight against the government, because at the end of the day, you have a social responsibility to play, and if the government is making it difficult for you guys to play that social responsibility, you must at the very least work with us so that we can make sure that our conversation is a well-informed one.
And I think on top of that, this is why I think in all the bad things that he did, Professor Adam Habib, he was proactive enough to make sure that he starts the conversation with government and make sure that if there is a challenge of a free increment that he can't address, that students are complaining about, he's able to meet with other vice chancellors and go to the president at the time, President Zuma, and say, can we create some sort of a structure that looks into this thing? Although it was ineffective, that structure, and it came up with very bogus things. But this current VC and this current administration, we can't see where it's going in terms of coming up with initiatives or coming up with ideas that they take to government themselves and say, my students are saying X, Y, and Z. How can we assist them? Because this becomes a problem for me when they take to the streets and they get injured. And worst of all, we saw in 2021 what happened when protests turned deadly. So how do we avert that? We avert that by exactly what the president is saying. You make sure that you create initiatives prior to say, we know that there's a 44,000 rand cap coming up. Are there any concessions that NSFAS can give us as Wits University, because we are a state university, but none of our residences are sustainable under 44,000 rand, if that's what they're saying. But maybe NSFAS can cover the shortfall for all those other accommodations that are at Wits University, if they fail internally to resolve the issue of the budget, which I agree it should actually be regulated, that you are a state institution at the end of the day, so you can't charge 80,000 rand for res. It should be illegal for there to be a junction that charges black students in South Africa 100,000 rand. It doesn't make any sense, because the utilities that junction uses are the same rates and utilities that South Point uses and that any other accommodation uses, which is incredibly much more cheaper than junction, for example. So regulation, I guess, then plays a key role there to say, Wits, you're not an ivory tower, charge 40,000 for res and NSFAS will cover. But Wits must say that, though. It can't be left to a Kanakana or student leaders to think on behalf of the administration of Wits University, which is what we've been subjected to for the longest time and since this administration has started.
Now, guys, just because of time today, I would like to say thank you, and I would like to acknowledge this on camera. Bonga, you are the first guest to come to my show 2021 live on IG. You're traveling, going to KZN, you still made it live on IG. My first guest to the show today, sitting here. Because of that, I want to say thank you. And now I'm doing contact interviews. I've managed to talk to Maluskika, Manakaranaka, Trevor Gumbi, Professor Paging, and some other people, because you decided to be one of my guests. With that being said, man, I love you so much, man. Me, I'm a man who, when you love someone, whether you're a male or female, I tell you I love you. You know, I'm not part of this other thing. So, man, I love you so much, man. I really appreciate making that happen. So, man, I will never forget that.
No, thank you. Well, I was honored to be on your live IG, and I'm honored again to be here. And I think we'll continue to support the show. I think even with our lobbying and advocacy, I can say with certainty that the South African Youth Economic Council also supports in whatever we can your platform and your growth as well.
No, thanks, guys.
Must force him to commit equipment.
They will. They're around 30 second hands, new, brand new. They're around 50. So it can.
He must advocate with the NYDA to make a plan.
Yeah, you see
This
now
thing
we are
of hiring
struggling.
330.
We are struggling with time because of venue and equipment and all the stuff. So, but we will grow, starting small.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you have learned a lot from these insightful views, and just to make sure that tomorrow or the next day we have other prominent figures like them to come to the show. Make sure that you click that subscription button, you like, you comment, and you share. So you subscribing to the channel determines the amount of figures that we are going to have to the show. So I love you guys. Thank you.